gummy bear.
It's the internet, you're busy. Let's do this for April 22nd, 2024. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Embracer Group is shifting to the Garfield and Friends School of Business, and Starfield is totally hot and uncensored around the world. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Emma Fyffe, everybody. Emma, how are you doing?
I'm great. I had... it's early on the West Coast, so I had myself a little bowl of on-sale granola with some almond milk, and now my cat, who's just out of frame right here, let's see if I can get him. This kitty. Cat, he decided that he deserves to finish that, so that's how my morning's going so far.
Yeah, my cat has gotten worse about eating human food. He's an old bastard now, and he's gotten worse about it. And it's definitely has caused him some intestinal issues when he finds the kids' food under their table or whatever.
Yes,
they're messy. They're kids.
And God!
And so every day it's like I got to get in there and clean that up, or else he is going to eat it and have stomach issues.
Truly, my brother has a 1.5-year-old, and his dog has never ate better in his whole life. I was FaceTiming with them yesterday. She had a bowl of pretzels. She ran off. My brother ran after her. And I just watched as the dog immediately stuck his whole face in the bowl of pretzels.
Yep, that's how it goes. Yeah, you can't.
Great.
The kids are basically animals, and it's too busy taking care of them to realize, oh my God, this cat is gonna make himself so sick, and now I gotta clean a cat butt of poop and stuff. It's a whole thing over here.
Oh no,
it's real, and he's a long hair cat too, so it doesn't come out easy. Everybody, it's worse than you're imagining. Absolutely, but that's a good way to kick off a Monday. A little cat
butt talk.
Cat butt talk. Yeah, welcome to Cat Butt Talk, everybody. How's your weekend going? Otherwise, Emma, was it refreshing? Do you feel recovered?
Yeah.
You're ready to get back at it?
I do. My body decided that I needed to just lay in bed all weekend because my back was just like, nope, we're gonna just lay here. We're gonna play some Switch, and we're gonna watch some, I was going to say watch some terrible television, but everything I watched this weekend was good. So
Yeah, I finished Fallout. I thought that show was pretty good. It definitely, I got to keep stuff in perspective because I'm kind of I think I'm a little bit of a TV snob. There's a couple of shows that I think are actually good, and the rest of it's kind of mindless drivel. That's fine to watch or whatever. I'll still enjoy it, but I don't think it's up there with The Sopranos and Andor. Those are my two shows. I'm like, those are better than everything else. And they are. They are.
Andor is literally the highest bar in television.
Absolutely.
It's so good. But that being said, I really dug the Fallout show.
I really dug Fallout too.
And it was funny because I thought that the pilot was outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of it was pretty good, but then it got it back in the end for me. So overall, net positive, really looking forward to the next season.
Then I went to try to go watch the 3 Body Problem on Netflix, and I got halfway into the first episode, and I found it repellent. I'm just there's something about the way the show looks, the way they're acting, the way it's written. Everything was just pushing me away, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go read the book. Screw this. I just cannot handle it. I don't Netflix just feels like they want to be that second screen just on in the background show, and so they're not even trying though. And it's I don't know. I'm like, I could not stand that show.
I haven't watched it. My brother's read the book, and he said he watched it and he liked it. But yeah, for me, I watched frickin' Fallout, and I watched X-Men 97. So I had a great weekend of television.
X-Men also very good. Absolutely very good. Yeah, I think Fallout's just a really solid show. They did a pretty good job with it. Not mind-blowing or anything like that, but definitely way better than what they were doing with Halo and all that stuff. The other thing that happened to me this weekend was I tried my new rollerblades, and they were a little They were a little bit
Right.
different than the last one. So it was like, I think my center of balance on my foot was like way different than I was
Oh my
expecting.
gosh.
I basically ate shit right away
No.
and landed on my wrist. I like tore up my elbow and stuff. It was real rough. Yeah. So I did the whole peace and love thing instead of applying ice. Like that's the old tech. You're not supposed to put ice on injuries anymore. I just did compression and kept it elevated and rested it. And now it's, kind of back in action. We're doing, it could have been way worse, but then I'm like, okay, I need to acclimate myself to these different states.
Yeah, it's wild. When you're a child, you don't have that far to fall.
Yes, it was very
So
far.
when you fall down, you get back up. It's no big deal. I ripped up the entire back of my leg rollerblading as a kid, got severe road burn. I was back on my rollerblades the next day, no problem.
Exactly. Now I'm like, man, I don't like another one of those and I'm done. I'm going to turn to dust. So going to be careful over here. All right, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Embracer Group announces plans to split into 3 separate companies. This is from Chris Cillian at VGC. Swedish game and media holding company Embracer Group has announced its plans to split into 3 separate entities. The group will separate into 3 companies: Asmodee, Coffee Stain and Friends, and Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends. And I'm not joking. That's what they're actually calling these.
Those are the actual names.
Those are the actual names. Coffee Stain and Friends, and Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends, each of which will be listed as a separate company on NASDAQ Stockholm. As part of the separation process, Embracer has entered into a new financing agreement through Asmodee, which is worth 900 million euro. Embracer says the proceeds for this will repay existing debt and reduce leverage in the remaining Embracer Group. Asmodee will continue to operate as a publisher and distributor of board games, trading cards, and digital board games, and will consist of 23 fully owned studios. Coffee Stain and Friends will focus on PC, console, and mobile games, including community-driven free-to-play games, live ops games, and indie/AA games. It will operate under premium and free-to-play divisions. The premium segment will consist of Coffee Stain, THQ Nordic, Ghost Ship, Tuxedo Labs, Tarsier, Amplifier, Game Invest, and others. Finally, Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends will be a creative powerhouse in AAA game development and publishing for PC and console, and will own the Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider IPs, along with the likes of Dead Island, Metro, and Kingdom Come Deliverance. Studios joining Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends will include Crystal Dynamics, Dambusters, Eidos Montreal, Flying Wild Hog, Tripwire, Vertigo Games, Warhorse Studios, and 4A Games. That's the gist of the news there. Okay, so most of this is just sort of like inside baseball, them trying to reposition themselves to be better financially positioned to attack the marketplace with their new projects. And so that they're basically, so they're not in a situation they were in last year where, Dead Island 2 comes along, sells really well, does very well for them, and it didn't really make a dent in their numbers because it was such a large, unwieldy company with so much debt that a successful game didn't benefit them. This should shift that a little bit. So if they have future successes, I think they're still co-publishing that Space Marines game with the team that left recently, and it's like, okay, so if that happens, they might get some benefit now to these companies. But beyond that, it also feels like a chance to get away from the Embracer name. Do you think that this is going to succeed at like resetting the perception of Embracer and now these new companies?
Effectively, they have been operating as, it's like Embracer and then a bunch of divisions. And basically what they're doing here, as you say, is they are making the divisions into their own separate companies. And I think that actually is potentially a smart move, because as you say, getting away from the Embracer name of it all and putting themselves in a position wherein you have 3 companies sharing a massive amount of debt. So suddenly that debt becomes a lot more manageable. and there's more opportunities to recoup being in these smaller positions of, okay, this company, Coffee Stain and Friends, has put out a new game in Roblox, which is something that they actually do. And, you know, you get sort of more individual attention on the different like brands within the company, so to speak.
Yes. I mean, I think definitely what Embracer definitely needed, well, it needs a lot of things, but one of the things it needed was to sort of be able to scale things down so that some of these component parts can feel like they're getting more attention. And now that like the top of the chain sort of stops at like a publicly traded company, that makes more sense in some ways. It still doesn't make, these things don't make a ton of sense, but they make a little bit more sense than Embracer did overall. That could help a lot of these studios. But mostly, I think we are not a lot has changed. Probably is really what has happened here. These are still going to be this. Yeah, they're still going to have like the same operating issues they did before.
Yes.
I also think that I don't get why Asmodee doesn't have any friends. It's Coffee Stain and Friends, Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends. Where's Asmodee's friends? It's got 23 studios in there. Is it just lonely?
I mean, and Asmodee is the one who's out here making tabletop games. You need friends.
You need friends. That's the whole idea. Yeah. Oh boy. They like announced this in a big presentation, like on the stage, with Lars Wingefors, who's the CEO, and another, I think, probably their chief financial officer, being like, "Hey, all right, get excited for this." And it's just like, man, they are in such a weird position that this is like the big event for them, that they're announcing that they're spinning off all these things into their own verticals going forward. Do you think that they're like, we're going to look back in a couple of years and be like, oh, okay, yeah, God, remember Embracer? And we'll be able to like put that stuff behind us? Or do you think this is the stink is going to carry on?
Well, I think that the stink is potentially going to carry on. And some of it has to do with just, I don't know, the state of gaming and games media. We've seen so many instances of these companies restructuring and that affecting the workforce and potential future titles. Now, look, do I think that people are trying to churn any kind of content, be it TV shows, video games, et cetera, out at an alarming rate wherein the quality is suffering? I kind of do. But, you know, the fact remains that this impacts people. Yeah. Who, despite the fact that there's like people are talking about respect for humans, in the chat, and this is, you know, kind of showing a lack of respect for humans, because, you know, this cut a lot of jobs, canceled a lot of games. Do I think that those games were necessarily going to be huge hits? I don't know. But I hope that this puts us in a position wherein, you know, the companies operating on as these smaller separate entities have the opportunity to recuperate and, you know, get people back into the workforce. But I don't know. It's it's just a bummer all around.
Yeah. I also wonder, like, what does it look like where like the debt all gets shipped? Like Asmodee's worth 900 million euro, and they're like, oh, okay, and it will basically be taking on all the debt. That's going to leverage, like enable, it's going to reduce leverage in the remaining Embracer group. It's like, why is Asmodee having to take all that on? Is that something that's going to drag down the board game group? I don't know. It's a weird move.
Yeah.
It's
but you know, Lara Croft, friend of Middle Earth.
Yes, so. A friend of Middle Earth, indeed. Yeah, they sold off Saber. They sold off Gearbox. They like those things felt too big for what is happening here. These do feel like smaller initiatives overall, although, you know, Eidos and Crystal Dynamics are still pretty big studios. They actually are a bit smaller than something like a Gearbox or even a Saber, which has several studios under its banner. So this definitely feels like a paring down and like a kind of trying to right size, which is that word that executives always use when they don't want to say downsizing. The downsizing has already happened. The layoffs have already happened here.
Yes.
And now it's like, okay, let's rebuild the company in an image that looks like it can actually grow again. Because I think that's where they were going to be in a real tough position with Embracer overall. The growth was originally coming from acquisitions. They were making more acquisitions to be like, okay, revenue is up, because we added more revenue from these companies that we bought.
Right.
And they were at the end of the road of that. And so now it's like, and then they were looking at like, okay, well, now that we're at the end of the road, how can we get Embracer to a place where it feels like it's growing fast enough? And it's like, that's probably going to be really difficult to pull off. So now they just like, they sold off a bunch of studios. They have a bunch of studios left, and they made them smaller overall businesses that feel like they have a higher ceiling now. It's a kind of a house of mirrors a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, I hope the studios underneath it are able to make good games. I guess that's all that really matters.
I mean, that is really what it boils down to. And ultimately, I am for breaking up extremely large corporation. You know what I mean? It's like the potential of smaller businesses to operate independently and make something that is ultimately more interesting that they're putting all of their resources into definitely exists. So yeah, as you say, hopefully these smaller companies just make good games.
All right, moving along here. Stellar Blade will be uncensored in all regions. This is from Jordan Midler at VGC. A post from the game's Twitter account reads, Stellar Blade offers the same uncensored version in all countries, including the Japanese version. This post came in the wake of some PlayStation titles having regional variations, which players have routinely called out for perceived censorship. Stellar Blade will be released on April 26 as a PS5 exclusive. The demo is available, all that stuff. This is probably mostly notable because so many games recently in Japan have had different versions so that they could get the appropriate age rating so they could actually go on sale in the country. And that's happened repeatedly now. And this news actually was like so... it caught the attention of like executives over at EA, where they're like, hey, we put out Dead Space in Japan, and it has like similar looking monsters and a similar level of violence. And if you've seen Stellar Blade, the way that like she like slices apart the monsters is pretty violent. Dead Space had to have a different version. They're like, why the hell did we have to do that? And Stellar Blade does not. Which, you know, it's never like, you never want to be like, oh, you know, why do punish everyone else the same amount you punished me? That's never a good look. But I get what they're saying there. But Stellar Blade seems to be getting away with it. I wonder if they're like, this is like the ebb and flow of regulation in so many countries where it has nothing to do with Stellar Blade and maybe just has something to do with like, oh, at the moment, maybe Japan's being more lax on the regulation. I don't know. But as it stands, Stellar Blade is going to be uncensored, which probably doesn't mean like full frontal nudity. It probably just means violence,
I have to tell you, when I saw Stellar Blade and uncensored, my immediate thought was, oh, more jiggle mechanic.
Yes. I think I noticed this story was like #1 on VGC, and I'm like, what the, why, who cares? Like, of course. Yeah. And it's like, because people, it's like that unrated DVD edition where like people think that implies something like scandalous when really just means like, well, no, there's a version you submit to the MPAA and this version didn't get submitted to the MPAA. That's all that actually means. But there's something like scintillating about the possibility. And so when people hear uncensored, yes, the mind immediately goes there. I totally see that, which is why half the reason this story is in the rundown is to grab that attention, of course.
Absolutely.
I do wonder like what this game's legacy is going to be as we go through it. It's out in a couple of days, right? God, is it out very soon? Man, I'm trying. Like I thought it was
watched
April 24th.
Y'all play it a little bit, and I was like, oh, it's sexy anime lady fight monsters.
Yeah, I don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's got a ton going on. I thought the fighting was pretty good in the boss fights, and and like it's got a vibe like in between those big moments too. But God, yeah, it has not deserved the amount of attention really that it's gotten. I think it's going to be a pretty decent like B game when it's all said and done.
Look, you bring the waifus, people show up. We had this conversation about Genshin.
Really yes, they absolutely do. All right. Midori confirms a sequel to Sonic Frontiers is in development, and the name could get a change. This is from My Nintendo News. It would seem as though the Sonic team's next big project is a sequel to Sonic Frontiers, which launched in 2022. The news was first shared by Daniel RPK and was corroborated by reliable Sega Atlas leaker Midori. Sega has not announced a sequel to Sonic Frontiers, but it seems as though it is their next big game in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. I am someone who liked Sonic Frontiers enough. I didn't think it was spectacular, but I thought it was a decent first effort for like going in that direction with Sonic. And they got more right than they got wrong. They just didn't get it like super right. It wasn't like, oh, well, this is just, of course, this is the way you're going to do things. It's like, okay, this feels pretty close. I think, though, a sequel is a no-brainer because it's like so many ideas that they could build on from there. So this is my expectation too. I'm not too surprised to hear this. How about you?
I fully forgot about the existence of Sonic Frontiers. And that's the thing, is that when a game is good, fine, exists, you do just kind of forget about it, you know,
totally.
Because it doesn't make a big splash unless there's something that's really keeping it in the public conversation. Typically, be it that it's really good or really bad, or it's Fallout and there's bugs. Just so many, there still are. But yeah, I mean, when a game is just kind of like good, it kind of comes and goes. So that's how I feel about Sonic Frontiers. And exactly as you were saying, when you're in a situation wherein there's a lot of good ideas and you mostly got stuff right and it did fine and people mostly liked it okay, why not make a sequel?
Right. It's the kind of thing where Sonic is not like in some position where everything that they're trying is working. Right. Sonic Superstars came out after Sonic Frontiers. That one really came and went. And I beat that game. I think it's kind of bad. Okay. It's like there are some parts of it that are enticing. I think it looks pretty good. The characters look pretty good. Once you really get moving, that's fine. But the boss fights are inane, and the levels are not like that inspired or anything like that. Yeah. But I get like, okay, so that's like the 2D or like the 2D gameplay. It's got 3D visuals and a 2D plane. That should continue to happen. Yes. Although I think I would prefer Sonic Mania. At the same time, Sonic Frontiers is that kind of thing where I can just put that on. My kids will start just messing around in that game in a way that they can mess around in a lot of like decent 3D platformers. Yeah. And the game is conducive to that. And there's something playful that I think Sonic should be embracing with that. So I think Sonic Frontiers is a really solid foundation for that. Even if I think people's reactions to it vary like greatly beyond like, okay, so I think it's a solid foundation. Some people play and like, no, this is just a straight up bad game. Some people play and they're like, no, I really enjoyed myself. And I think that's like the kind of the funnel that exists in. But I think all that stems from this foundation they could build on really well with a follow-up. I played so much Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. Yeah. And yeah, I'd love to have that joy recaptured for me. But we are going to need to figure out, remember how the Dreamcast had the little like cartridge thing that you put into your controller and you could just like take your chows on the go with you, the VMU. So we're going to need to figure that out because I liked to play with my chows in the VMU. They should bring back the VMU just in general. Just let me have a VMU for whatever reason. That would be worth it to me. Oh my God, making the Chow Garden and like just making new chows. You could get such cursed ones. They're so good. I like it because it's like you could like take your VMU to school and then your brother would be like, all right, I'm gonna go sit down and play some Dreamcast games, and it's like, wait, where the fuck is the save thing? Oh, the VMU. My asshole brother took it to school, and now I can't play anything. It's like, yes, that it was a cool idea, and they should bring it back. That's what I want. Yeah. Yep. All right, let's take a quick break. When we get back, a lot more headlines, including what's happening with Fallout and its resurgence. Right after this. All right, we are back. And as promised, Fallout 76 records its best concurrent player count on Steam just a week after setting previous record. This is from Malik Mathur at IGN. Fallout 76, the open world multiplayer RPG title, has broken its all-time concurrent player count on Steam 6 years after its launch. The game from 2018 has received a surge of popularity after the Fallout TV show on Amazon Prime Video. After the player surge saw the game record its best ever active player count, the record has been broken once again. The record was broken just 1 week after the previous record was set. As it stands, Fallout 76 recorded 64,000 players actively playing the game on Saturday, as per Steam database. The previous record was a week ago, below 40,000. I think it's probably worth noting, as I remember it, Fallout 76 did not launch originally on Steam. I think it launched originally on the Bethesda launcher. That could be wrong. I think that's the case, though.
I think you're right.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. But either way, it's like setting new records because of the show. Not too surprising. And like as a follow-up to that, like Fallout 4's 525% increased player count is approaching Helldivers 2 levels. This is from Paul Tassi at Forbes. Thanks to a massive resurgence in interest due to Amazon's great new Fallout show, plus some big time sales, Fallout 4 is experiencing what are far and away its best numbers since its launch on Steam in 2015. Fallout 4 used to be topping out at a respectable 24,000 players a night, which is very respectable, by the way. But as it stands, it has 160,000 concurrent players and rising over the weekend. This is approaching more recent Steam mega hit of the moment, the multiplayer 2024 released Helldivers 2, which currently has 175,000 players. Yeah, so that is buck wild bananas numbers. And I mean, I think we go over this over and over again, where it's like, yeah, if the show is a hit, it can really fuel the games. But every time something like this happens and puts it in like such stark contrast of a 525% growth, 160,000 concurrent players, like the second most for a game that was like primarily like a premium price game. Like the only games above that were like Helldivers and then some free to play games. It's okay.
Yep.
That is wild. And a lot of people are saying, I'm sure Microsoft and Bethesda are kicking themselves for not having like Fallout 5.
Something.
Yeah, Fallout 5 ready to go. And it's like, yeah, of course. But I think part of like where we're at in terms of gaming is like, if you can get an older game to pop off again and people like play it as if it's a new game, that's a success as well.
Oh, that's the dream, honestly, is for your previous projects to have some kind of longevity and popularity. And the thing that we are absolutely seeing, and I mean, this happened with The Witcher back in 2019 as well, where suddenly there was this huge surge in sales of The Witcher 3. I think that it was like, now granted, it had just come out on Switch in October of that year, I want to say, but like it was, sales went up by some crazy number, like 500%, over 500%. And even without the Switch sales, it was still a pretty healthy, like 60% increase in sales. So I mean, the fact that this is happening with Fallout on such a massive scale, especially because you do have these games being out there for very, very affordable pricing.
Yes.
It was very, I have to assume it was intentional that these games were on, I mean, they're on sale on Steam all the time anyway, and they're all like in Xbox Game Pass, but one has to assume that there was some intentionality behind the fact that these games were on massive sale when the show dropped, and clearly it's having the desired effect.
Yep, it is. And I think games they didn't used to be this way. They used to be like, hey, they would come out and then a couple years later that game would be obsolete to the point where it's like you couldn't continue to sell that, and you could like, it's kind of even hard to like rent them still, like back when rental things were still happening. It's like, nah, that's old stuff, people don't want it anymore. And then like since about like 2015, maybe a little bit before, a little bit after, but around 2015 is when like these perennial forever games started to hit in a really long way. And not just like forever games as in online multiplayer live service games, stuff like Fallout 4 and Witcher. And before that, Skyrim. Skyrim's like an example of that before. Like people just continue playing these forever. And
wild,
and having a new way to surface these things and continue to sell them is beneficial, and clearly the TV show is that. I think the other thing this really highlights for me is just how much of a miss that Halo show was, because it didn't do the same thing for Halo.
Yeah, it didn't move the needle for Halo at all.
Yeah, I think when it did move the needle, it was mostly people just being like, I hate this. I want to go play something that feels more like Halo.
Yeah. Well, I once again am looking at wiki data, and it has been since the show came out. And again, the thing that's really interesting is the fact that Amazon Prime typically releases their shows on a week-to-week basis, the way that network shows do. But with Fallout, they released all of it at once. And typically in that case, you're going to see that the wiki trends start going down if it was a TV show that didn't have any supplementary material. But of course, this is based on the Fallout video games. So we've just seen it go up and up and up. Literally, there were like a couple of days in the middle of the week last week where it dipped a tiny bit from what it had been the top, which was the day after the show premiered. And now, like, it's gone up by hundreds of thousands. It's wild.
Yep. And I think that that is difficult to predict, but I think it's something. I think it did play into some of the decision to release it all at once. But I think it's also the kind of thing where it's like once that snowball gets going, it does just kind of build and build on itself, and I think we're seeing that. And even if it's not people watching the show, I think just the zeitgeist around Fallout is encouraging people. I asked over the weekend, like, hey, why did the show make you want to play the games? And many of the answers were I didn't watch the show, but everyone's talking about it, and that got me like thinking, I like Fallout, or I have Fallout, and I should finally play it.
Truly, I mean, my fiance spent all weekend playing Fallout 4. I'm like, I gotta load up New Vegas, which is my favorite. So because again, it's like, I think that the thing that the show did particularly well, any story gripes that people might have aside, is it did such a great job of portraying that universe and that version of a nuclear apocalypse. And it's weird to be like, it's a really fun apocalypse, but it is kind of fun. That's the point of Fallout, is it's goofy. It's this is not surprising to me at all. However, the insane spikes it really puts stuff in perspective. Let me put it that way.
Yes. The highlights for me were for that show were when it got the goofiest, when it was like when John Daly shows up as a snake oil salesman, and then his snake oil actually works, and I'm like, hell yeah, it's Fallout. I forgot I'm watching Fallout. That actually it really got me, where I'm like, okay, I'm glad they recognized what show we're watching, and that they reminded me that that's what I'm watching.
Spoilers for the Fallout TV series, very, very minor, so don't stress about this, but I guess cover your ears. Fred Armisen showed up randomly.
Yes, very good bit.
The like radio DJ,
and he's got the perfect like Fred Armisen character for that guy. Oh my god! Like people get so fully mad at this music. It's like, okay, what do you? Oh man, that was a great bit.
Yeah,
I really liked that a
lot. Everything with Matt Berry, like, oh god, it's just Oh god. The NPCs were great. Let me put it that way.
Yes, exactly. Matt Berry was great. But just Fred Armisen talking about the mids. Those are the mids. There they are. You can hear them right there. Yeah.
Yep, you can hear them. Yeah.
And Fred Armisen's like Portlandia smile. It's Falloutlandia. That I would watch a whole series of that.
Falloutlandia. And then they went out of their way to make sure that we hated Thaddeus because anyway, I'm not going to say anymore. It's great. You should watch the show. Loved it.
Yeah, it's a really good time. Okay, so then they just weren't going to have a Fallout 5. That was not going to happen.
No, it wasn't. No, they definitely weren't. I think that the thing that I will say is that it's good that they've gotten Fallout 76 to the point that it's at now, when suddenly you have a bunch of people who are interested in Fallout either again or for the first time, and they find themselves in a situation wherein people who possibly had previously been avoiding Fallout 76 have been hearing, oh, it's playable now. Show comes out, they're in full Fallout mania, and they go, you know what? I am going to give Fallout 76 a try now. And by and large, my understanding from people who stuck with it is that it is actually, fun to play now.
Yep.
Certainly more fun than it was at launch.
Yes, and I think it's the kind of thing where, okay, so we see 60,000 concurrent players for Fallout 76. It normally has around 12,000, but 160,000 for Fallout 4. People are going to play Fallout 4, and I like that game a lot. I think most people don't like it as much as me, and I'm fine with that. I really, really, really do not care. But I think what's going to happen is like people are like, that didn't quite scratch the itch for me. Maybe now I will go check out Fallout 76 because I'm like in there. I think a lot of people are like, I want to play a Fallout game. Let me just go play the last real Fallout game. I think that's what people are doing right now.
Yes, that is what people are doing right now.
I think once they get sort of through that process and they look around like, oh, this Fallout 76, that's right. This is newer. They've done a ton of updates. Everyone I talk to that plays it seems to like it. I think they will funnel into it a little bit more after they sort of splash out of Fallout 4. And I think the game is like well positioned to take advantage of that. We say they didn't have a Fallout 5, but they 100% have a ongoing Fallout game to take advantage
live
of
service.
this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea of playing Fallout 76 with friends. Again, apparently you're kind of locked into playing by yourself for a while, but I'm not against it.
Yep. Yeah.
Could be fun.
Yeah, I think God, I just finished Tales of Kinzera Zao, and I want to play some more Hades 2 on my Steam Deck. But I'm like, you know what? Fallout 76 on my Steam Deck seems like it'd probably be a pretty good time. And
it'd be
I heard
really
it's
fun.
like a game you could like mostly play by yourself. I'm like, I'll do that. And then like later on, if I have a character I want to do some multiplayer stuff with, I'll have it ready to go. So we'll see. I am in the Fallout mood as well as everyone else.
I am in a Fallout mood, but you also mentioned Hades, which is where my head is at right now.
Yes, absolutely. Did you get a chance to play any of it? Because it was, God, it's real good, that Hades.
I haven't played the technical test yet.
Nope,
I haven't gotten a code for it, but
very good.
I'm gonna just reach out to
directly. Honestly, I think Jan just signed up for the technical test on Steam, and he just got approved through like the natural means, so you can try that as well.
To be fair, I haven't looked directly on Steam, and maybe I did get approved. And if I did, then I will not be doing any work today. Sorry to my employers.
All right. There's a rumor that Sony is considering launching Helldivers 2 for Xbox. This is from Jonas Mackey at Game Reactor. Sony released Helldivers 2 for PC and PlayStation 5 earlier this year, and it immediately became immensely popular. Since then, it has remained one of the most popular titles on Steam and shows no signs of slowing down. And perhaps those great numbers could grow even further in the future. According to Xbox era insider Nick Baker, shouts to Nick, Sony is currently in talks with Microsoft to potentially release Helldivers 2 on Xbox, but he notes that negotiations or conversations around it are in a very early stage, very preliminary. Microsoft's gaming boss Phil Spencer has previously said that he thinks Sony should release Helldivers 2 on the Xbox, and it would almost certainly mean millions of extra players and more revenue for Sony. Emma, I'm in a space where I look at games that like sometimes skip Xbox, and that's not what Helldivers 2 is. Helldivers 2 is a PlayStation published game, but I look at games that skip Xbox and I go, I kind of get it. JRPG, I kind of get it. Like that's a little bit, it's quite a bit of extra work, and that juice might not be worth the squeeze. Sometimes it is, but not always. And these companies are being a little bit conservative. I get it. Helldivers 2 is a game that would do very well on Xbox. Just straight up would crush on Xbox.
This is a no-brainer.
So is it money on the table, or is it the cost of doing business? That's the choice that companies now face, and those companies being Microsoft and Sony. And Sony's like, Microsoft is like looking at those two options, and they seem to be leaning towards that's money left on the table, and they're starting to put more stuff out on PlayStation. Sony, I think, is like for a long time been like that's the cost of doing business of growing the PlayStation brand and growing the PlayStation 5 install base. Is we leave money on the table by not putting games on Xbox, of course. Yeah. I do think that position probably is softening, and Helldivers 2 just feels like the right game to sort of burst through that bubble.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is, for me, growing up a child in the 90s, my first experiences playing shooters was on Nintendo 64 with
Sure.
GoldenEye,
Yep.
obviously. But then other than that, it was, playing Halo on Xbox. And so, yeah, it totally feels to me like Helldivers 2 would crush on Xbox.
Yes. I mean,
I think there's plenty of people that is their only barrier of entry for Helldivers 2 is that they have an Xbox and they don't have a PC and they just haven't been able to play it yet.
Yep. I think if it was, it's a game with crossplay already. When you're in the game makes it very clear that everyone's working towards the same goal. And so like early on, players were like, man, we wish we had the Xbox players in here helping us. That would be nice because we'd be able to make a stronger push. And so it's already got this communal, this is a Helldivers 2. This is a Helldivers 2 thing. This isn't like, oh, this is a PlayStation game. It doesn't feel like that when you're in there. It feels like this is its own world. And it was separated from all those other desires to keep to have another game on a list of exclusives. All that said, what do you think the chances are of this really happening? I think conversations probably are happening, but conversations, as I think we see on the show all the time, people talk about everything all the time. Everything's always on the table. Every acquisition's been talked out or whatever. Dead Space 2 actually does get brought up in conversation. They do consider it, that sort of thing. But what are the chances of this really happening?
I think that they're going to be proprietary and not do it. But I think that is a mistake because you've already won, and you're going to make more money by making a deal with Xbox to release your but I get this is not the first time we've seen something wherein it was on Steam and on PlayStation. I for some reason I think of Fall Guys, where when that launched, it was on Steam and it was on PlayStation if you wanted to play on console.
Right.
So
Rocket League too.
But again, this game already supports crossplay. It just, to me, adding Xbox is a no-brainer. But I think that there's the perception of
it does feel like this is the one that they'd be able to get away with it the most, and yet it would probably still cause some headaches for them among their diehard community. But their diehard community is not necessarily showing up for these kinds of games. They're the ones that are very interested in the single player narrative driven games that have high cinematic
why I have
values.
A PlayStation.
Right, exactly. So it feels like let them have Helldivers 2 at a certain point. I'm gonna say on the grand scale of time. So 5 years. Within 5 years, this does happen, I think. But we'll see. It's not a guarantee. Definitely far from a guarantee. All right, moving on. Ubisoft is reported to have completely scrapped plans for more Watch Dogs games. This is from Marcus Pearson at Game Reactor. There seems to be no more hacker adventures from Ubisoft, and the company is said to have completely given up on the brand. This is according to a leaker with a track record of sharing information about past Assassin's Creed games, who describes Watch Dogs as dead and buried. The person mentions the failed Watch Dogs Legion as the coup de grace for the game series, and that Ubisoft has subsequently canceled several ongoing projects linked to the series, including one with a battle royale theme. Ubisoft seems to have left the hacker lifestyle behind in favor of its million-selling Assassin's Creed and Far Cry games, with the recent release of Mirage and a 7th chapter in the latter series imminent. Okay. So I this one also is not completely shocking, but it is. I think it's indicative of where the trouble that these companies face. Where yes, you do have Assassin's Creed and you do have Far Cry, and these things are successful. And so the answer, I suppose, is double down on the successful franchises at the expense of the thing that hasn't quite broken out yet. And yet it's man, it always feels like Watch Dogs is just one or two things away from really finding itself and breaking into that next echelon. And at the same time, maybe it's they thought Legion was that, and because it didn't, they're okay, well, that was the big chance for it, and because it didn't, now it's time to scrap everything. I get it to a certain extent. Yeah. But what do you think this says about Ubisoft?
Oh boy, Ubisoft. Yeah, this is not so surprising to me because I do feel like everything that Ubisoft puts out outside of their, big Assassin's Creed, Far Cry kind of series, it struggles. And look, there's been plenty of other game series over time that have had this exact kind of situation of, okay, well, this is the last one of these games that we're going to put out. And if this one doesn't do well, then this series is done. And it's like, I feel like, I don't know, has Watch Dogs had enough chances to abandon it? I can't really say.
Yeah. So God, I remember that first Watch Dogs getting announced, being very exciting. One of the early next gen games showing off at the time. Looked very promising. The game comes out, didn't quite live up to expectations, but had a lot of cool stuff there. And then I think for me, a big problem is like the sequels like always felt like pretty separate from like everything they built with the first. Like, so they go to a different town and then have different characters. And it's like, okay, I get what you're doing. You're kind of doing the GTA thing. Yeah. But in GTA, the cities have so much character. That like conveys so much of what the game is about. And I am trying to remember. I'm going to assume the second game was San Francisco because they did a bunch of stuff about Facebook and Google. So now I'm like remembering. It's like, yeah, that was San Francisco, and people are like, it was like kind of a pretty realistic San Francisco. But that's like as much as anyone ever said about that world. And then Legion was like London, but it was like this goofball thing, and they were doing more with like the characters you could pick up and trying to have more systematic elements. And it just seems like that stuff didn't pan out quite either. I don't know. I think that Watch Dogs is the kind of thing where 3 tries probably was enough to know whether or not that idea had the ability to break out or not. And yet, I don't think it's a great idea for them to be kind of returning and sort of falling back in terms of their position to just Fallout or Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. Those the Assassin's Creed has been proven to be like, when it works, but when you miss, it like goes off the rails hard for several years, and people are like, no, I'm done with that. And Mirage was the Mirage I think did well because they're promising like smaller scale and like kind of like bringing things down like back to the original. And it's like, okay, yeah, you did that. I don't think you're doing that with the next one, and probably for the next several after that. It seems like they're getting bigger and bigger again. You could burn people out real quick.
Absolutely. I mean, and it is interesting, with Mirage, because I do feel like Valhalla was, I know a lot. I liked Valhalla, and I know a lot of people that really liked Valhalla. So I think that there was like pretty positive feelings around Assassin's Creed in general, except to be like, well, this felt like we were missing the kind of, obviously you can still go the stealth route. I attempt to play every single game like it's Metal Gear Solid. So, not enough boxes for my taste, but yeah, I mean, like there's, but Valhalla was massive.
Yes.
And Mirage was kind of bringing it back to a smaller scale and the sort of more traditional assassin gameplay of Assassin's Creed. So I think that feelings around that game around that series right now are overall hopeful. So to me, I feel that that's why it kind of makes sense that they're really putting their resources into that, because they're like, okay, we're in a situation wherein we have a real right to win.
Yep. Yeah. And it's and I don't think it's like much better over at like Far Cry, where Far Cry's got a very strong formula in terms of they are going to do what that game does over and over again, to the point where it's like, they were trying a lot of interesting stuff in Far Cry 2. You could like shoot off branches off a tree and then we would realistically break, and fire would spread in a realistic way. And then they do Far Cry 3 and it's like, we don't think players care about that stuff. And I think, unfortunately, they're right, But then I think what that puts them in a position where it's like, well, then we're just going to, and it's maybe this is like reflective of their overall strategy. We're just going to repeat back the things the players tell us they like by like using the metrics that we see that's what they engage with. And we're just going to keep making that over and over again. And then things start to feel pretty stale. And I really don't know how many people were that excited about Far Cry 6. And then it came along and was kind of disappointing on its own. And so I guess Far Cry 7 going to solve that?
Ubisoft is very much a quantity-based studio.
Yeah, definitely.
So perhaps by scaling back on some of their ancillary projects, they can focus on making their flagship titles good.
Yep. Speaking of Ubisoft, let's jump down to this last story real quick. No, Cillian Murphy is not starring in Far Cry 7. There was a brief period of eyebrow raising when a leaker recently seemed to suggest that Cillian Murphy was going to be the next star of Far Cry 7. No doubt it's high-profile leading villain like we saw with Giancarlo Esposito in Far Cry 6. Turns out, no, that's not happening. Which, I mean, even if Far Cry does nab stars here and there, Cillian Murphy, last year's best actor Oscar winner, Cillian Murphy, come on. Murphy was shown... yeah, go ahead.
It's Cillian Murphy's Oscar statue, actually, is going to be the villain
would be the
in Far
scariest
Cry
villain
7.
Yet. Absolutely.
It's going to be an Oscar statue with his name printed on the placard at the bottom of it.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and I would be terrified. It's like, what's the definition of insanity? It's an Oscar. So Murphy, it was shown by the leaker, Jonathan with a 0 instead of an O, as part of a series of images seeming to suggest elements of Far Cry 7, but they have been a bit too cryptic for their own good, leading to this bit of alleged news, though perhaps other sites may not have been wise to fully jump to this casting conclusion in this context. The French leaker later said, mind you, I never said Cillian Murphy was going to be in the game. The image means something else. Which to me, that means it's like, what do you think of when you think of Cillian Murphy right now? You think of Oppenheimer. And you think of nuclear weapons. So now didn't Far Cry 5 have a nuke go off at the end of its game? So I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But
Grubb, I just hopped in the chat very quickly to let you all know that the same day that this leaked, Cillian won an IFTA, which is the Irish version of the BAFTAs. It's the highest honor that an Irish actor can get. And whenever you Googled his name or you searched for him on Twitter, the first thing that came up wasn't him winning an IFTA, it was him being in a Far Cry game.
He should just do it.
Poor fucker.
He should just do it now. Just feel like him leaning to it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and ask for all the money in the world.
Exactly. They'd probably give it to him. Either way, Far Cry 7. It's happening. Maybe this means it takes place in Ireland. I would like that. That would be fun.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more games that are not set in the U.S. There's a lot of games set in the U.S. We make our way down to Mexico, I feel, a fair amount. But, I think Europe needs some love.
Yep. I think Ireland especially. That'd be very cool.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to skip the Little Big Planet 3 servers are shutting down. That's sad. They're shutting down. They did that without any notice.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to go to Sony and Apollo discuss joint bid for Paramount, says source. This is from Dom Chmielewski at Reuters. Sony and Apollo are making a joint bid for Paramount Global, according to a person familiar with the matter. The companies have yet to approach Paramount, which is in exclusive deal talks with Skydance Media, an independent studio led by David Ellison, though some investors have urged Paramount to explore other options. The competing bid, which is still being structured, would offer cash for all outstanding Paramount shares and take the company private, the source said. Sony would hold a majority stake in the joint venture and operate the media company and its library of films, such as classics as Star Trek, Mission Impossible, and Indiana Jones, and television characters like SpongeBob SquarePants, according to the source. Okay, so this is obviously not PlayStation news. That doesn't mean it couldn't affect PlayStation. It almost certainly would in some ways. But what do you think this means for like Sony's strategy overall? It's because like Sony had Crackle for a while. These days they just license their shows and movies to like Netflix primarily, but to a bunch of different services. They don't have their own platform. Is this a play to like build back up toward a platform of their own, or just to like have more stuff to license?
So it's super interesting because Paramount, merged with Showtime, which was huge for me because I was like, well, I have Paramount Plus and I have Showtime literally just to watch Yellow Jackets, so this works out. But I don't love monopolies. And everybody is definitely trying to, but how do you not try and acquire companies when the Walt Disney Corporation is basically running the planet? And I don't know. I'm also like, as far as video games go, I'm just envisioning all future, Sonic the Hedgehog titles being on Sony, since Paramount has the, film and television rights. But I wouldn't be so surprised if this went through, because I feel as though Paramount is kind of treading water.
Mm-hmm.
And Sony is in the very advantageous position of not simply being a media company. They also make hardware, electronics. That was really what Sony was originally known for. It's the same way that Amazon is in an advantageous position because of
because Amazon
gestures to the world.
Yep.
Amazon and Disney theme parks, NBC Universal theme parks. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like this goes through.
Yep. It's kind of all trending in that direction.
Yep.
Real quick before we get to the poll, that trailer for Tales of the Shire. Tales of the Shire. Not Tales of Jason Schreier. Tales of the Shire.
Yes,
is here. This is the survival game, I think. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Forge friendships.
It's Animal Crossing, but hobbits.
It was this 2 weeks ago. It says 46 minutes ago. So all right, fair enough. It looks pretty decent. It looks like kind of fun and cute, I think.
Yeah.
I'm interested. We'll see. All right. I got a poll question to get to. I'm gonna get that set up. While I'm doing that, Emma, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet and all that good stuff?
Yes, you can find me on the internet at Emma Fyffe. That is my name. That is my handle on basically everything, all the social media that I don't actually participate in but still exist on. And the Emma Fyffe on TikTok. Again, really just a lurker there. I'm Emma Fyffe in the Giant Bomb Discord. So if you really want to talk to me about something or yell at me about something, find me there. And there should be, if you're going around the gaming wikis later this week, you might see my face talking about some wiki stats.
Woo! I'm excited. All right. Poll question. I have this one from Friday. Did you play Kingdom Come Deliverance? 24% said yes. 76% said no. Now they're making another one. Actually, that was part of the whole deal with Embracer splitting out those groups. Kingdom Come Deliverance is from Warhorse Studios, and they're making a sequel. I think the second one has a chance to do a little bit better than that, but I guess I'm not shocked that only 24% of respondents of the 3,000 people that voted said that they actually played this game. Is this what game that you've played? Have you even heard of Kingdom Come Deliverance?
No, yeah. I am 76%.
Yes. Yeah. It's a historic open world RPG. It's got some cool stuff in there, but the game definitely had some sort of bad juju when it came out in terms of people at the studio embracing Gamergate a little bit, which kind of sullied things back in 2014 or 2015, whenever it came out.
Yeah.
It's Pentiment but Skyrim is a good way of putting it.
Pentiment but Skyrim. Okay.
I'm still interested in the second game. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. New poll question. Do you want another Watch Dogs game? Yes or no? We will get the results for that and discuss it on Game Mess Mornings on Giant Bomb on Wednesday. Speaking of Giant Bomb, on Tuesday we will have the Bombcast. We should be doing some fun stuff earlier this week. We'll hopefully be able to get up on the site relatively quickly. I'll probably find more time for more Fallout New Vegas. That was a ton of fun. I want to be playing that game all the time, so I'll try to find more time for that. It's really, really good. And then you could expect the regular Blight Club should be back. God, Dan could beat that game relatively soon. Honestly, he might beat it next episode.
Is he still playing Superman?
He's still playing Superman 64.
Oh, God.
He's almost through it. He is on the last level, which he has to play on hard to actually beat the game.
Oh, no.
We'll see. But then once he's done, it's my turn. And apparently they've already picked out my game. And I'm frightened. I'm gonna say it's Armorine's Project Swarm for the Nintendo 64. That's my guess for the game that they're making me play. All right. Anything else? No, not that I could think of. Emma, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking about video games. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you all for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself and meow meow.
Bye.